Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us on Kare 11 News Now. I'm Kent Erdahl. Breaking this afternoon, Pam Bondi is out as Attorney General. President Trump firing her after expressing frustration with how she's running the Department of Justice, and according to those close to the president, how she handled the Epstein files. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche will replace her as the nation's top law enforcement officer. That's according to the president. In a statement on Truth Social, Trump called Bondi a great American patriot and a loyal friend. He also said she did a tremendous job over the past year overseeing a, quote, massive crackdown on crime across our country, and says she will be transitioning to a job in the private sector. Just in, the union for more than 600 doctors, nurse practitioners, and physicians' assistants at Allina Health says it's reached a tentative contract agreement. It comes after 2 years and dozens of bargaining sessions between Allina and the Doctors Council SEIU. The agreement also follows a one-day strike last year that impacted 90% of Allina clinics. Full details of the new 3-year agreement have not yet been released. The union says it does include the ability for providers to be more independent. The agreement now needs to be ratified by union membership. We're live in Washington, D.C. now, where a vote on funding for the Department of Homeland Security will not happen until at least next week. The House has adjourned until Monday with no action on the bill. This comes after President Trump and House Republicans said they will join Senate Republicans on a deal. With support from Democrats, they plan to take one vote to fund all of DHS except for ICE and Border Patrol. Then, separately, they'll vote to continue funding immigration enforcement using a process known as budget reconciliation. That can bypass Democratic filibuster power in the Senate. Now, this is welcome news for air travelers and TSA workers who have been caught in the middle of the longest partial shutdown in history.
It's both parties. There is no single person to be blamed. I think it's every single one of our elected officials. It is their fault.
At the same time, we're keeping an eye on the White House. In the last few hours, President Trump made an announcement on social media saying he'll sign an order to resume pay for DHS, including FEMA and the Coast Guard. Developing now in the war in Iran, President Trump says the U.S. will conduct more aggressive strikes. In his primetime address, the president said he expects to be at war with Iran for at least the next 2 weeks. Those comments quickly sent oil prices soaring once again, causing ripple effects around the world. NBC's Raf Sanchez has the latest.
While President Trump said in his primetime address that the military threat from Iran had been nearly eliminated, the reality here in the region is that Iran is still able to lash out against its neighbors. On Wednesday night, it fired several ballistic missiles towards Israel as people in that country were celebrating Passover, one of the most important days in the Jewish calendar. Overnight, authorities in Saudi Arabia say at least 1 ballistic missile and 5 drones were fired towards them. And in the days leading up to the president's speech, the Iranians striking 2 oil tankers, one of them here in Qatar, the other in Dubai, makes it very clear that the Iranians have the ability to strike at their neighbors. They also continue to threaten the Strait of Hormuz, basically enforcing their own control over that critical waterway, forcing oil tankers to pass through a narrow passageway controlled by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. I can tell you there is also a lot of skepticism here in the Middle East about the president's claim that the Strait of Hormuz will open up naturally once the war ends. You can see in the oil markets, prices are going up because there remains a lot of concern about whether oil is going to be able to get through that passage even after the shooting stops. Raf Sanchez, NBC News, Doha, Qatar.
Right now, Minneapolis police are looking for whoever shot and killed a man near the Lowry Tower apartments overnight. Investigators say the shooting happened around 1:20 this morning near 31st Avenue North and 4th Avenue. Officers found a man who had been shot and tried to save him, but he died at the hospital. Police gathered evidence from the scene. However, no arrests have been made. 2 teens are recovering this afternoon after a vehicle theft and shooting overnight. This happened near 35th and Colfax around 1:15. Officers say they were called to a vehicle theft in progress and multiple gunshots. 10 minutes later, that stolen vehicle dropped a 14 and 16-year-old off at North Memorial with gunshot wounds. That vehicle was later spotted by police and crashed on Marshall Street near the 44th Avenue Bridge. Here's video from that scene, and you can see several emergency vehicles responding. An adult male was taken to the hospital for his injuries. Now police are trying to figure out what led up to the initial shooting. This afternoon, Fridley police say they need your help finding 2 dogs involved in a deadly attack on another dog. Police say 2 loose Staffordshire Bull Terriers attacked a person and killed one of their dogs near 5th and 63rd Avenue on Sunday at around 7 p.m. They're asking anyone with surveillance footage or video of the attack to call police immediately. Right now, Supreme Court justices are mulling over President Donald Trump's bid to end birthright citizenship for children born to undocumented immigrants and immigrants who are here temporarily. Yesterday, justices appeared skeptical of the Trump administration's attempt at limiting the law that's been in place for more than 150 years. Jessica Hart has more about what's at stake.
The nation's highest court never hears easy cases.
Can a president revoke a right for people that is explicitly written in the Constitution of the United States with an executive order?
The right in question, a section of the 14th Amendment. President Donald Trump was at the Supreme Court to hear his Solicitor General, John Sauer, argue on his behalf on why he thinks it's within the president's power to limit automatic citizenship of babies born to undocumented parents.
8 billion people are one plane ride away from having a child who's a U.S. citizen.
Well, it's a new world. It's the same Constitution.
So the Chief Justice himself seemed quite skeptical, and other justices did as well.
Tim Johnson, a University of Minnesota political science and law professor, says the justices were skeptical because this constitutional amendment has more than 100 years of precedent. It goes back to the United States versus Wong Kim Ark, a man born in the U.S. but a son of Chinese immigrants.
Mr. Kim Ark made the argument that he had been born in the U.S. and therefore under the 14th Amendment, he needed to be and should be considered a citizen of the United States, and the U.S. Supreme Court agreed.
The 14th Amendment says all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States.
The administration's argument is that the 14th Amendment is explicit only to former enslaved people in the United States, that because it was a series of amendments, the 13th, the 14th, and the 15th, which were meant to address issues of slavery.
Johnson says the American Civil Liberties Union that sued the administration over the order argues against that it wasn't just meant for former slaves.
Makes an argument that birthright citizenship, as written in the 14th Amendment, the plain words, doesn't say enslaved people. It says simply that anyone who was born in the United States is a citizen.
Johnson says both sides have legitimate arguments, but one is stronger.
When you look at the way justices make decisions, and in particular more conservative justices ideologically, oftentimes those justices decide on what scholars will call the plain meaning of the words. And in this case, the plain meaning of the 14th Amendment birthright citizenship clause is very simple to understand. Bottom line is anybody born in the United States on U.S. soil is a U.S. citizen.
A quick heads up for drivers. Right now, there are extra patrols on the roads looking for distracted drivers. Holding and using your phone while driving has been illegal in Minnesota since 2019, but law enforcement officers still see it every day. And according to the Department of Public Safety, just last year, more than 150 people in Minnesota were seriously hurt and at least 21 were killed because of distracted driving crashes. One of the people killed was the daughter-in-law of the mayor of Shakopee.
This journey, or experience, more like a nightmare, has forever changed and negatively impacted our family in so many ways. None of us will ever be the same.
This enforcement campaign will run through the end of April and has a price tag of more than $1 million using funds from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Right now, an urgent search is underway for an American journalist kidnapped in Baghdad. Iraqi officials say Shelley Kittleson, a reporter from southwest Wisconsin, was abducted Tuesday. U.S. officials believe an Iranian-backed militia known for targeting Americans may be responsible, though Iraqi authorities have not confirmed that as of yet. Merrill Hubbard tells us more about Kittleson's work and the efforts to bring her home.
From speaking to family and friends of Shelley Kittleson, it's clear that she touched countless lives around the world through her storytelling. Before becoming a freelance journalist in the Middle East, she grew up in Darlington, Wisconsin. And now, following her disappearance, the Foley Foundation hopes to help her and her family.
I will definitely be keeping them and Shelley in my prayers and reassure them that at least our government is on it, that they are very aware of the abduction and actively looking for her.
The Foley Foundation partners with the U.S. State Department to help bring hostages home. It was founded in 2014, just weeks after freelance journalist and Marquette graduate James Foley was killed by ISIS. He had been reporting in Syria. I spoke with his mother, Diane Foley, the foundation's president, about the dangers journalists face overseas. She says she was horrified to hear about Kittleson's kidnapping. What goes through your brain as a mother who has lost their kid overseas as a journalist?
Well, it's very sobering, Meryl, because unfortunately it's happening more and more.
Over the last 2 decades, Abdul Ismail, a friend of Kittleson, says she immersed herself in communities across Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan.
She wants to be always affiliated with the marginalized, vulnerable, poor, displaced people, and she feels that herself she has this obligation to be their voice because they don't have voice.
He was surprised to learn she had been kidnapped.
She has this unique style of being pretty balanced and neutral about all issues.
Kittleson's mother told TMJ4 she had last heard from her daughter on Monday, receiving an email with photos. Foley is among many praying for Kittleson's safe return and her ability to continue doing what she loves.
We need journalists like Jim and Shelley who have that moral courage and curiosity.
Stick with us. More news and weather's coming up after the break.